Hey. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right?
All right.
You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Ron Brumbarger. Ron is one of Indiana's most recognized technology and education entrepreneurs. In 1992, Ron co-founded BitWise Solutions, Inc. and continues to serve as the company's president and CEO. Ron's foray into education started in 2006 when Governor Mitch Daniels requested he launch Indiana's first statewide virtual charter school, which is now known as Hoosier Academies. In 2013, Ron founded Apprentice University, an award-winning proficiency college serving motivated high school graduates eager to accomplish more than a traditional college degree. In 2016, Ron published his first book, You're Always Being Interviewed. Ron and his wife, Cindy, enjoy traveling and spending time with their two sons, Tanner and Hudson. So, Ron, that's the intro I have for you, man. But tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, I've been in the technology business for about 30 years as a professional and own a business named BitWise Solutions here in Indianapolis. BitWise is a 26-year-old firm. We've been building websites for 23 years, planning and building websites for 23 years. And in the course of that 23 years, we found ourselves perpetually looking for more people and the right people, and yet finding that the local universities were continually producing graduates that we couldn't hire. They just weren't ready for prime time. And after so many years of the same agenda, same song, same dance, I got frustrated and said, I'm going to grow my own. I'm done with you guys. You can go back to the drawing board and figure it out on yourselves or for yourselves. So that's it. I decided I'm going to grow my own. That was 4 years ago. And Apprentice University is for this month, so we're getting old, and here we go.
Yeah, so you guys listening, that is the sign of a true entrepreneur right there. Ron, a guy or a gal who sees an issue that they're having, and they decide, well, I'm not going to wait for somebody to solve it. I'm going to go ahead and solve it. And obviously that's worked out well for you, man, with Apprentice University, and so again, for people listening, I actually contacted Ron maybe a couple weeks ago now to talk to him. I'd stumbled across Apprentice University, and I love the Apprentice model, and we've seen that a bit with Praxis and some of the Praxis people we've had on the show. And I saw that he was doing something along that same vein, and so I had to call him up and talk to him and find out what this was. And long story short, decided to have him on the show because I think what he's doing is so valuable and revolutionary. So, Ron, give us, if you could, maybe give us an overview of Apprentice University, what it's all about, and how the program works for people listening.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we sit at the confluence of three approaches to education. The first is, of course, apprenticeships, where our students work alongside companies and trained mentors from the corporate partnership that we manage. And we have a whole mentor training curriculum. We put companies and their dedicated staff through to understand the differences between apprentices and internships and co-ops and so forth. There are subtle differences, but yet very critical to the success of our program and success of our students. So that's part one, is of course apprenticeship, given our name, right?
Yeah.
Part two is we have in-person courses, and we're very adamant about the conversations that occur in the cohorts that we manage. So in this regard, you would find us looking a little more like I almost cringe when I say this, a little more like a traditional college in that we have classes and we have faculty facilitating the classes. But our classes, of course, are different. They're based on a Socratic discussion model. They're not based on what we like to call the binge, test, purge strategy that you see so often these days in education. There's no sage on the stage writing notes on the board and other people copying down the notes feverishly in preparation for the test on Friday and then the final exam. That's not real world. Nobody learns that way.
Binge, test, purge.
Binge, test, purge, yeah. Nobody learns that way, and nobody works that way. I don't know about you, but I don't memorize a bunch of material and go into a meeting and present it and go, gee, I sure hope they liked it. And then come out realizing, oh, I forgot 2 lines. That's crazy. That's not
totally.
Learning. That's just crazy. So
Yeah.
the BTP approach to education's toast. Fold it up, throw it away. Anybody still teaching that way should be fired. So apprenticeships and our Socratic discussion courses. And our courses, by the way, are facilitated and led by practicing professionals. And those professionals have experience in the field, and they have time under their belt. They know what they're talking about. They're not rookies at the conversation that they're leading. So we had a computer science class. We actually taught computer science in a Socratic discussion approach.
Really? That must have been really interesting. Yeah, no kidding.
It was a real stretch, but you know what? We got it, and we figured it out. We know how to do it, and we're actually very good at it. The other part related to our academics is we use online courses as well to supplement what is impractical for us to teach in person, right? Some things just aren't practical, or we would have a class of 1 or 2. And so we use online courses that enable us to really drill deep into a given topic for a particular student's needs and serve their account. And then finally, we are all about digital badging for demonstration of competency. And I won't share all the details of exactly how all that works because it's a bit proprietary, but just suffice to say that all 3 avenues, so our mentors, our faculty, and our students representing the badging environment, all 3 are very tightly interwoven with each other. And everybody has purview on what's going on for that student's growth. And it's a very unique blend. No one's ever going to replicate this crazy model that we've put together, yet we know it's to be extremely effective in its approach. So that's what we're doing.
Now, Ron, you talked about binge, test, purge, and how you wouldn't just memorize a bunch of stuff and go into a boardroom and just regurgitate it all. I remember when we talked last, we seemed to have independently come up with the same analogy for the difference between maybe
football.
An environment like yours and it was football.
Sure.
So talk about that, and because I thought that was really interesting and funny.
Well, so here's the analogy I like to use, and that is, let's say that you're the quarterback on the football team, right? And you've got a wide receiver position that you're getting ready to put a guy in, and it's a critical game. You got to win the game to win the national championship. It's the Super Bowl. Okay,
Yeah.
And you got a guy, and the guy's got the right build to be a football player. He comes to practices and does a little bit of the practices here and there, but mostly he sits on the sidelines or in the locker room just simply reading the playbook. And now he is the master of the playbook, right? You call, as the quarterback, you call left 42. Man, he can tell you where every single player should be every nanosecond of the execution of that play across the board.
Yeah.
Mr. Walking Playbook, right? But he's never been hit. He's never caught the ball in a game. He's never been hit. He's never hit anyone. And he sure as heck never been in a Super Bowl. Now it's on the line, and you're going to put him in at wide receiver and throw him a pass? No way.
No.
There's no way, right? There's absolutely no way. You're looking at him in the huddle and you're saying, dude, you've only read the playbook. You've never been hit. You're going to stretch out your arms, you're going to catch a pass that's a stretch. You're going to expose your ribs, and you think you're going to get hit by a linebacker coming at you top speed. Really? No way. Same holds true in the real world. We see graduates coming out of classrooms. Well, not every graduate, not every classroom, right, to be fair. But graduates coming out of classrooms, all they've done is study the playbook. They've never been hit. They've never caught a pass. And they sure as heck don't understand the pressure of a real game. They don't get it.
Yeah, totally. And that's what's so beautiful about the concept of apprenticeships is because you're actually getting in there, you're being trained for a specific job, and you're getting real world experience. And I just posted about this yesterday on my Facebook about the concept of, it was on the About Me section of Successful Dropout. It was the concept of auto-credentialing, which is kind of a term that I'm coining, but it's this concept of being your own credential and building your own credential. Of course, understanding that people go to college and universities for that degree, that diploma, that credential, that signals to the world that you're ready to create value in the workforce. You can build that yourself in 2017 and beyond, and one of the great ways to do that is through apprenticeships and actual real-world experience. So, Ron, it'd be interesting for you to explain for people listening the difference between, at least maybe according to your program, an apprenticeship and an internship, because I know internships are really popular. I have a couple friends in college right now who are doing a lot of those internships. But what's the big difference, and why would you suggest one over the other?
Well, let's start with internships. And I'm a big fan of internships, just for the record. None of this is to disparage or discourage anyone from pursuing internships.
Yeah.
Au contraire, that is not my DNA. But the difference between an internship and an apprenticeship is the following. With an internship, and by the way, I've had interns at BitWise as a standing business unit of our firm called BitWise Fellows for almost 11 years.
Oh, wow.
And for many, many years, for the first 9 years, they ran their own P&L and they had their own president.
Serious.
So I'm a big fan, absolutely. Now, they worked after school, weekends, some were homeschooled, so they get in here whenever they needed to, et cetera. And they had their own president, they had their own P&L, they had their own client list, et cetera. And it was a big deal. And we graduated some amazing students through here who went on to get full academic rides. Some work at Google, some work, I don't know where all they are. We've had about 80 in the last 10 and a half years, if that gives you a sense of scale.
That came through your company?
Yes.
Man,
yes.
I love, and excuse me for interrupting, but I just love the concept of you have your company and you're having trouble hiring the people you want to hire, so you literally created a solution just even starting out just for people coming through your company and training them in real world knowledge and experience, and then set them on their way. And now, of course, you've built a whole separate entity with Apprentice University, but...
Yeah, well, so the grow your own, right? If I can't buy what I want at the store, I'll just plow some dirt and put it in the ground and grow it myself. So,
love it.
But in this case, so we're very intentional about that internship, or in this case, the fellowship, as we called it for these students. But an internship, for the most part, represents a finite window of time where you, as the employer in this case, or the supervising party, are engaged with that young person. So let's say a typical internship for a college student starts June 1st, ends August 31st, yeah, plus or minus, right? A few days here or there.
Okay.
That 3-month window of summertime. Well, you know, as the employer, yeah, you know what? Really don't want to keep this guy. He's got 2 more weeks. Let's not fire him. Let's just ride it out. In 2 weeks, he'll be out of here. Who cares?
Right.
Well, or hopefully, wow, I can't believe we only have 2 weeks left with him. How are we going to pull all the knowledge that he's gained out of him so we can continue using it when he leaves? But it's a finite end point, all right, very finite end point of time. Now, you might be thinking, well, let's bring that person back next summer, and then after they graduate, perhaps we'll offer them a job, to be determined.
Right.
But there's not a contemplation that you are part of their mentoring fabric, right? So when our students, in comparison to a mentorship or an apprenticeship rather, that mentor, that responsible party, knows they are going to be called upon to evaluate and grade and, in essence, graduate with their approval our student. And we come back to that if you'd like. So they know that it's not just a couple months, one and done kind of thing and you're out of here, that they're going to be with this student for quite some time as they promote them at the end of their apprenticeship work with us. The other aspect of this is that in an apprenticeship, if you go way back, way back to the contemplation of apprenticeships, right? Yeah. There was always this graduation of responsibilities, right? So an entry-level apprentice does this, an intermediate apprentice does this, and then an advanced apprentice does this.
Yeah.
Well, we practice that exact same formula, right? We think time is a good teacher, history is a good provider of insight and wisdom, and so our students start off in their apprenticeships in the very same model. New students coming in start off at that kind of entry-level apprenticeship level. Students have been with us for maybe a year. They're advancing and they're taking on increasing responsibilities as they go over time. So as you're hiring an apprentice from Apprentice University, you're asking, or you're very much aware, hey, this is a very entry-level position, first-year apprentice that we're looking to put on board. Conversely, you might say, this is a very sophisticated role, and we really need somebody that can accomplish this goal in the 4 or 5 months they're going to be with us during their apprenticeship. Very different conversation.
Yeah.
An internship is kind of not one size fits all, but there's not this contemplation of a gradient of responsibilities in an internship. It's subtle, but very, very important and very different.
Yeah. Now, your apprenticeships, are they paid?
Some are paid, some are not paid. Depends. We really mirror the real world. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to be, if you, for example, really want to be a horse farrier, do you know what a horse farrier is?
No, I have no idea.
A person who shoes a horse, right? If you want to be a farrier, chances of us finding a paid apprenticeship for you in central Indiana are 0, right?
Right.
If you wish to be in a certificate we offer called digital storytelling, or if you wish to be a programmer or a web designer, or if you want to practice in information security, et cetera, the chances of us finding a paid apprenticeship for you are very, very high. So farrier or programmer, pick, right?
Yeah.
And so some are in between. Sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not. Just really depends on where the student is in that progression or that gradient of responsibilities, the career interests they are in, and who's in our network, who's available and who's in our network.
Gotcha. And so now, how many students have you had go through the program?
We've had 1 graduate.
Right, and
we're still kind of new. And our program, we just went through kind of a re-envisioning model, right? We left Port under version 1.0 4 years ago. It took us, several months to get students on board. You got to get started.
Yeah.
And after that, we were rolling under the 1.0 model, and it was okay, but we found some edges in there that we didn't expect, and we had to break them off, sand them off, and replace them. And we did that, and then late last year, in the fall, we'll say October or so, we started sort of getting this itch to retool a little bit. And so we created I'm a football football fan and football analogy, as we already know.
Yeah.
I like football analogies. So we created our 2.0 playbook. And our 2.0 playbook, we really changed up the model a lot and brought in some of the new attributes and so forth. But in that 1.0 model, back to your question, the program was laid out to be about 30 months.
Right.
And I still, that's maybe a little longer than we expect under our 2.0 program, a student to be enrolled, but it's not out of the question.
Mm-hmm.
And there are reasons for that. So our first student was with us about 3 years, just under 3 years. And he graduated. He announced his graduation in November of last year. And he had 4 written offers by Christmas.
And you were telling me that
3,
one of them offered him a bonus, right?
Yeah. So he was given 4 written offers before Christmas. One of the 4 he had not apprenticed with. They simply knew the rigor necessary to get through the program.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 3 he had 3 additional offers brewing, and of those 3, only 1 he had apprenticed with.
Wow.
So one of the first offers he received in writing was with the company where he is now, and they smartly offered him a signing bonus if he signed by January 15th, which he did, and that was the smartest move ever in the world. They just took him off the table straight away, and that's where he ended up going, and he got his dream job, and he's making a very, very nice wage for a young man.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And so how many other people do you have who are going through the program then?
We are at about 20 at the moment.
And so he was able to, just because of the reputation you've been building with the program and the other participants in it, you have these companies that are approaching you who wanted him to work for them, even though he'd never apprenticed there. You must be doing something right, man. And you also mentioned, which I thought was very interesting, that there was a couple large high schools in Indiana that are wanting to partner with you on the program because of the success they've seen.
Yeah, we're kind of the new cute kid, new cute girl in school, right? Everybody wants to talk to us.
Yeah.
And because we don't really subscribe to conformity in many cases, we don't drive on the right side of the road. We don't drive on the left side of the road. We're not really even interested in being on the road. We want to drive off the road. And what we've found is that a lot of leadership of some of the very large schools here in central Indiana are saying, the factory model of education is put kids on a conveyor belt. We drop them off the end of the stage when they graduate. We drop them into college, and they come back a year later going, I'm sick and tired of being in college or in classes, and now I've got a bunch of debt I got to worry about, and I don't know what I want to do. So the factory model of education doesn't work. And we all know this to be true. Anybody listening to this that tries to defend the one-size-fits-all education model is just, I don't know, they need to go back to Camp Delusional.
They're living about
or something.
50 years
it doesn't
ago.
work. Yeah. It just doesn't, at Camp Delusional it might, but in the real world it does not work, right?
Yeah, totally.
So these guys are asking us to partner with them in using our models and using our competency-based calculators and equations and validation tools and so forth really changes the game. And so now you can give a high school senior legitimate credit for all the work they did in high school. When I went to college, I had taken 4 years of Spanish. And in order to transfer a bunch of that and to get credit for it, I had to go test out of 2 classes and take a third one. And all of that was remedial from what I did in high school. This is a joke. Why are you putting me through this again? And I was not fluent, but I was, I could hold my own.
Yeah.
And I had to go do it again. The same holds true in math. I had to go take the same math classes again. Now, we can talk about why. If you ask why 4 times, it goes to money. And so you can kind of do the equation, but that's just not how the real world works. Mm-hmm. So the local high schools are eager to partner up with us. They see the depth of the program that we've created here, and the rich education. You know, I think it'd be real easy to think about apprenticeships in our world, and just incidentally, our apprenticeships really focus on those high demand, high wage, high skill careers that we kind of know what the job titles are today, but we sure as heck don't know what they are tomorrow because they haven't been created. And so that's the type of positions we're creating. When we talk about Apprentice University, we're not talking about skilled trades. Nothing wrong with those. Mike Rose listening, we love the skilled trades, but that's not our baby, right? And so we're really all about that strong proficiency, but the educational elements at Apprentice University, the academic side of what we're doing, and the Socratic discussion models that we lead with our academic courses, it's pretty powerful stuff. It's pretty powerful stuff. Stop rambling, but
well,
it's pretty rich.
One thing you had said, Ron, is that this graduate you talked about, you said he announced his graduation, which kind of implies to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the participants in your program have quite a bit of agency. You know, they're pretty autonomous. Is that correct as far as just being able to, I mean, obviously I know you have a kind of a program that they have to work through, but as far as being able to control kind of their education, you kind of see what I'm saying?
Sure, of course. Well, they do within bounds.
Right.
And we're all about an absolute real world experience. Don't forget the farm. Let's come back to the question about the farm, okay? Because that's kind of where the headwaters of that river start. But we're all about an absolute real world experience. So all of our students have to interview for their apprenticeships. There's no assignment. You don't just get the job. That's not real world, right? So when we are preparing a student for what we affectionately refer to as Judgment Day, we don't. Graduation sounds kind of conformist.
Right.
We like the idea of Judgment Day, and there's a biblical metaphor there that we like as well. But in our world of Judgment Day, we tell a student you should start preparing for Judgment Day or graduation. And here are the email addresses of all the companies in our network. Send them an email. Announce your plans to graduate. And that's when the feeding frenzy began. So we like that approach. Probably not going to change it because it's all about real world. If we do a disservice to our students, it will be because we were too soft in how we had them earn their apprenticeships. We'll find the companies willing to have the conversations, but they still got to get the job.
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier about there not being one size fits all is so true. I mean, when people ask me about what do you think the future of education is, and when I've asked other people on the show, the general consensus is that there will just be more options. We'll start to move away from this one route, one system, one size to fit all, as more organizations like yours and like Praxis and Uncollege and some of these other programs, Minerva, some of these other programs pop up. And it kind of reminds me of this quote I'm reading a couple books by John Taylor Gatto, which I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
oh yeah, absolutely.
For people listening, if you really want a great point of view, a different point of view on schooling and education, how it should work, John Taylor Gatto is your guy. But he has this quote, and he says, "I've concluded that genius is as common as dirt. We suppress genius because we haven't figured out how to manage a population of educated men and women. The solution, I think, is glorious. Let them manage themselves." And that's why I love programs like yours and Praxis, and this idea of, give students the resources and the guidance and the real world scenarios, and then let them draw from those their own conclusions and become more self-directed and more look to themselves basically in their abilities and for their self-worth instead of credentialed authorities for their self-worth and their value.
Yeah. So I have a couple of thoughts about that. If I could just rattle a couple things off. First, we practice. We affectionately refer to the mindset of most people these days as the 11th commandment: "Thou shalt go to college."
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many. This is hunting season for high school seniors, right? And I can't tell you how many students I've encountered over the last 10 years of my work here at BitWise or the Hoosier Academies, or helping Cindy, my wife, run the master's study, the homeschool tutelage program she manages. How many seniors I've encountered look at me and say, I have no idea what I want to do or why I want to go somewhere, but I'm going to go to IUPUI, which is the Indiana University, Purdue University combo campus here. I'm just going to go there and take some classes.
Man.
Why won't you just drive around the block for the next 4 months and save a ton of money? What are you doing? So that 11th commandment is right up there with Adam Smith's invisible hand, right? It's the invisible hand, and the 11th commandment just compels people to do things in the invisible hand approach, which is good, right, for economic gain. And in the 11th commandment, it's just, why do you just blindly, lemmingly follow the crowd?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing, right? So we think a lot about the 11th commandment, but as a byproduct of that, I will tell you the largest challenge we face as a better way of education, I'll avoid using the word alternative, because alternative gives the connotation that, well, I can't make it to college, I'm going to do this alternative program. No, you're not the student for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the cleanup crew, right? We're better than you sitting in a classroom. No, not every kid, right? Not every student, but we're better than that. We're more daunting than that. If you want to sit in a classroom, go to college. If you want to get your backside kicked and be stretched and pushed and imagine you to your fullest potential, sign up. Let's go. Lace up, get started, get on the field.
Right. It's for people a little more of a challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I remember
I
was using the alternative word when we were talking earlier, and you were like, let me tell you why you might not want to use that word again.
Yeah.
And ever
so
since
we don't
then,
want that word.
Because you're absolutely right. I mean, alternative really just implies, school's boring, I don't like school, I'm failing out, I'd like to try something alternative, I'd like to try something new that might be more exciting. But that's so not the case. It's more of a challenge to opt out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, alternative has been relegated to the lesser of the two choices, right? Not the greater of the two choices. If it were commonly thought of as the greater of the two choices, then I would be all over it, but it's not. But our biggest challenge, to be real candid, is parents. Parents. It's guys I'm 52, and it's guys my age and gals my age, moms and dads saying, well, of course you're going to college. There's nothing else in the world. You will go to college.
Yeah. I
don't know what you're going to study, but you're going to go to college.
Man.
Whether or not that's the right path for the student, it doesn't really matter. We frequently hear this comment, and I love it. I love it when people say this to me. They say, it's a really good thing you guys exist because, not every kid's made to go to college. Well, you could look at that in two ways. You could say, we're a great alternative. No.
Right.
I look at it and I say, you're exactly right. Statistically speaking, on a national average basis, only 4 out of 10 students finish a 4-year program in 6 years. That means 2/3 of the students that rush off to college don't finish. So clearly, it's not for most.
Yeah.
It's not just for not a few, it's not for most.
Totally.
And when they do graduate, assuming, or when they've been in school for several years, they're going to leave with a whopping, on average, $36,000 in student loan debt. What a great way to start your career as a new hire, right? Incidentally, as a sidebar to that, get off this rabbit trail, as a sidebar to that, suddenly as an employer, I've got to amp your salaries up, so that you can cover your student loan bills as a result of having gone to school. Now, I'm disinterested in paying that tax as an employer. And I've had that conversation with many of new graduate here at BitWise over the years. So that's one aspect. The other thing, I would encourage you and your listeners to take a step back in history. I'm a history fan.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in the intro when Governor Daniels wanted to start Indiana's first statewide virtual charter school. That's a lot of adjectives ahead of school, by the way. If you add them all up, it's kind of scary. And in the course of doing that, it took me about 3 years to get that ball over the goal line for lots of political reasons. But I came across an interesting study in history. Let's go back, would be 215 years ago now, 213 years ago maybe. Thomas Jefferson just did something miraculous in the United States. He bought the Louisiana Purchase, right? And the word is out around the world that America is a cool place to be. And so we got immigrants flooding in everywhere, right? And Jefferson's worried about the literacy of our population. He's saying, I'm not so sure not having some kind of structured education system is a good idea. We need something to put in place. So he sends an entourage to study how they were doing this in Prussia, the country of Prussia at the time. No longer exists. And he goes there. He sends this entourage. He says, go there, come back with a template that we can send, we can replicate here in the United States. So they go, and in the process of being there, they spend time with a Prussian philosopher named J.G. Fichte. J.G. Fichte. That's spelled Fichte.
Okay.
Now, I'll summarize. If you look up Fichte's teachings and doctrine, first of all, it's rather scary. Second of all, when I was starting the charter schools, I was told by many a professional educator in the universities who were preparing teachers that they still used, so this is 200 years later, that they still used Fichte's doctrines in education. So College of Education at Ball State, in this case, where I graduated, I sat with the leadership in the College of Education. They still use, 200 years later, Fichte's approach to teaching. Now, one of the quotes, and I'll paraphrase it because I'll get it wrong, so it's paraphrased, right? Put this in italics. One of Fichte's quotes was, this will scare you, and by the way, don't take my word for this. Go look it up.
Okay.
Go look it up, right? Fichte's quote was, "We shall seek to teach a man to will that which we wish him to will."
Wow.
Let me repeat. We shall seek to teach a man to will that which we wish him to will. Now, I don't know about Washington State where you are, but in Indiana we have this thing called ISTEP, and it's our good old standardized testing. You see it on a national footprint now called Common Core, right?
Yeah.
And to your quote about Gatto is that we've just sucked the genius out of everybody and said conform or don't graduate. Well, Fichte's doctrine, Fichte's approach is in 2017. In Indiana, it's called I-STEP. You probably call it W-STEP or something. Who knows? And on a national basis, it's called Common Core. We've taken out that ingenuity. We just took it out. Go look it up. Go look it up. Don't take my word for it. So there's a couple thoughts about sort of this, why we've got to break the educational model out there and bring about new models like Apprentice University that really stand education on its head.
Yeah, and just turn the process of defining your value and your worth back to the individual and even their parents. Because like what you were saying earlier, the whole school system is built to teach us not to rely on ourselves or our parents, but instead to trust the evaluations of certified officials to tell you your worth through the use of things like tests and report cards and grades. And, someone who's programmed to get their worth from the approval of those who are quote unquote credentialed is going to have a really hard time adjusting to the marketplace, or a marketplace that rewards entrepreneurial thinking, risk taking, and creative thinking. Yeah. And the reality is the genius is there. I mean, we're all born with it. You see it in kids, how creative they are, how they don't conform to societal norms. And then as they grow up, you're taught to these standard averages that somebody somewhere has decided, these are the averages that you have to hit for XYZ,
Well, not only that, but just, in Indiana, and I'll assume we're like 49 others, right? But in Indiana, you can be in school district A as a freshman in high school, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say your family relocates 3 counties away, and now you're in school B. It's still a freshman in high school, so you leave on Friday, you say goodbye to your friends, hugs and kisses and tears everywhere, right? And then you move, and Monday you go to school at school B. Well, for the most part, you might be off a day or 2 or 3, but it's the same thing. It's the same content, just taught at a different zip code.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, but thank goodness we don't all look alike, because everybody, somebody'd look like me, and that would be terrible. And we don't all wear a size 9. We're not all same.
Yeah.
And you can't teach everybody the same way and the same thing. It just doesn't work. The neat thing about what we're doing is we literally took the old concept of apprenticeships that goes back to the earliest recorded time, right? If you read, for example, how do you think tent makers in the Old Testament learned how to make tents?
Right, yeah, we talked about this. Yeah.
Right. How did Jesus learn how to make cabinets as a carpenter, right? Somebody taught him. Somebody was a mentor. He apprenticed.
They didn't have carpentry schools then.
No, you didn't go get a degree in carpentry back then, right? You learned by somebody who was skilled in that art.
Totally.
And so we took the time-tested model and said, you know what? The new model, the new way of doing things, this, the factory model of education has failed. It is not failing. It has failed. And it has failed us as a society and as an employer. It has failed us. We can't keep acting like there's hope for the present model to suddenly resurface and go, hey, I'm working now. I mean, how many more dollars do we throw at it before we realize, that's just not going to work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this isn't, again, anybody that tries to defend the status quo is being intellectually dishonest. They're just not being honest about it. Come on.
Yeah, and I love how people like yourself, and we'll say Isaac Morehouse of Praxis, instead of spending time inside the institution trying to change it from where it's at right now, it's just too big and slow to change. You're protesting essentially by creating and building something else. And I think that's that entrepreneurial concept again in action. Solve a problem, build a solution. It's so powerful. The more students that we can put out into the world with that kind of mentality, I think the better. But Ron, you said something, you were talking earlier about one of your biggest challenges is parents. And actually on the show, that's one of the questions we get most often is, what do I do about my parents? It seems to be the number one, I guess you could say, pain point with people looking at different options besides college who want more of a challenge, right? It's the parents that they have to talk to. And so we talk a lot about different strategies, and I always ask guests who dropped out or opted out, how did you talk to your parents, hoping that they'll share about that. What wisdom or advice do you have for our listeners who are approaching this kind of challenge? What's the best way to talk to your parents about this, or maybe set up a practical plan that they'll get on board with?
Well, first, as an employer in a very leading edge company, and as the employers around Central Indiana will tell you that are part of our program, and others too, that gone are the days where a college degree grants you the job that you want.
Yep.
I call this. I'm a Christian, in case you haven't picked that up by some of my comments. But I call the college degree the original prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
Just zoom out and think about it a minute. We've told young people, since I was born, I was told, go to college, you'll get a great job. Well, that's a great prosperity gospel, right? And it just isn't holding true anymore. And it's not that it's not gonna come back. Okay, traditional models of teaching, as we know it today, don't excite students anymore. Their baud rate for intake is much bigger than the sage on the stage can deliver. And so parents need to realize the game's changed. It's not changing. It has changed. It changed a long time ago. And if you're still playing catch up and you're adamant that the only path to success is through a college program, you're mistaken. You're gravely mistaken. I can remember when I was starting the virtual charter school here, I had 24 families who were interested. 24 maybe potentially kind of sort of interested families, right? There are 4,400 kids enrolled in that school now, 10 years later.
Wow.
So I kind of know, not that I have any pixie dust or any crystal balls, or that I don't have all the answers, but I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to the game has changed. It's not changing, it has changed. And so parents need to realize that it's not your alma mater. First of all, the culture on a college campus today, look at Mizzou, right? The culture on a college campus today is radically different than when it was when we as adults today, or those with college age students, it's radically different than where we were 30 years ago. It's not even close than where we were 30 years ago. It's a very different ball game. And secondly, you got to realize that employers, frankly, don't care.
Yeah,
they don't care. As an employer, I gave a talk last night, and I give this same talk over and over and over again. As an employer, there's only 3 things I care about when I'm interviewing somebody. Can you get her done?
Yeah.
That's one.
Totally.
Can you get her done? Can you show me evidence you can get her done? Thank you, Larry. Right? The second one is, do I like you? Do you have attributes, personality, professionally, characteristics, behavior? Do you have attributes that I find pleasing? And of course, do you like me? Of course, that's a given. Right. But do I like you? Right? Can we get along? Can we work together? Yeah. That's the second one. And the third one is, can I pay? Can I afford you? So can you get it done? Do I like you? And can I afford you? Those are the only 3 things an employer cares about. Mm-hmm. And in a job market like we're in now, and we have been for a long time, and we will be increasingly so for a long time in the future, those are the only things that matter. Where, what, or when you went to school and what your piece of paper says on it, no one cares, because it doesn't, first of all, not in all cases, but it doesn't represent an education attained. It represents time spent.
Wow.
One more history lesson. Got time for one more quick history lesson?
Absolutely, man. Go for it.
Quick history lesson. 100 years ago, 115 years ago, Andrew Carnegie, you know the name.
Oh, yeah.
Thank goodness for Andy, we have libraries, right, around the country.
Right.
And he's really worried about how much time he's asking his executives to spend outside of the office learning, in studying and taking courses and things. And he was adamant, you will stay in a learning disposition. You will stay engaged in learning. He was adamant about it. He required it. And he's really worried. He goes, I really don't have a way to measure how much I'm asking my guys and gals to do. I have no way to know today, right? So they set about to craft an equation. And they said, let's call this equation the Carnegie unit. And the Carnegie unit, by the way, it's still used today. It's referred to commonly in Illinois, or the People's Republic thereof, as I affectionately refer to it.
Okay.
It's referred to as a Carnegie unit, but a Carnegie unit was designed to be the equation that says for every X hours in class and X hours extracurricular that you spend working on papers and presentations and whatever else you do, whatever that equation is, represents a Carnegie unit. Well, the Carnegie unit later became known. Now just pause. Okay. Andy only wanted to know about time, not what did you learn. He was only worried about the time constraints. Okay, let's make sure we see that. So the Carnegie unit subsequently became known as a credit. A credit. And so now we trade credits between schools.
Huh.
Now think about this a minute. Since credit and time are, in this case, mathematically synonymous, right?
Right.
Carnegie unit was time. Carnegie unit became a credit. So therefore, time equals credit. If time equals Carnegie unit equals credit. Therefore, time equals credit. Okay?
Time equals credit.
Time equals credit. But we as students will say, I'm going to transfer my time from Purdue to IU. Or, yeah, I'm going to go earn 4 units of time over here this summer in this class.
Huh.
This is true. Look it up. Don't trust Ron. Look it up. Look
I'm
up
going to have
unit.
to. So the credit came from Carnegie.
The Carnegie unit came from a Carnegie unit. And in fact, it was just about 3 or 4 years ago, the Carnegie Foundation of the namesake came out and said it would be really wise to stop equating credits, formerly known, aka the Carnegie unit, to educational attainment. They were only meant to measure time. Okay?
Oh, that's brilliant.
So just do the math. If Carnegie unit equals time and Carnegie unit equals credit, therefore time equals Carnegie unit equals credit, take Carnegie unit out, time equals credit. So you could substitute it.
Yeah.
Right? You could say, how many time does it take to earn this degree? How much time does it take? Yeah. It's not meant to measure achievement, just time. Stop and think about the fallacy. Now, I don't know about you. You seem pretty tech savvy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty tech savvy. You and I together, we could probably solve most technology-related problems faster than the average bear. Mm-hmm. Fair?
Yeah.
Right? The average bear is going to take maybe 20, 30, 50% longer. But does that mean that the average bear, that we slow down for that average bear because we can do it sooner, faster? Because it's the same class, right? And because of the factory model, we all have to move at that same speed. Now, what happens is the content and the curriculum, because we want the average bear to graduate, right? The curriculum and the content and the cadence of all that slows down so that average bear is successful at the back end. And you and I are twiddling our thumbs saying, hey, man, we could have had this done last night. This is week 15, and we were finished with the assignments 2 weeks ago. Why can't we move on? Well, because Billy Bear is not done yet. And that's the fallacy of the concept of credits.
Man. Wow, what an incredible lesson, man. I really appreciate that. It's competing in a closed system, essentially, and it's nothing like the real world at all.
Nothing like the real world.
Absolutely nothing like it. But that is so...
Nothing like the real world.
That's so interesting, though, the concept of a credit coming from Carnegie, credit equals time. Now everybody is supposed to take the same amount of time to learn the same thing and aspire to have the same grade in that certain amount of time. It really is a huge fallacy when you think about it like that. It's a whole new perspective on it for me.
Well, and let's make matters worse, and let's give the federal government control over all student loans, right?
Oh, man.
And the only place you can get student loans, for a reasonable fee is from the feds. And now everybody owes the feds, $1.4 trillion in student loan debt, right? It's crazy. It's just crazy, and it's perpetuated by the 11th commandment that thou shalt go to college.
It's just insane. I think I might have told you this, Ron, but my wife, and we did an episode on this a while back for those of you listening, my wife racked up about $60,000 worth of student loan debt that we're still paying off to this day. And she did that earning her degree in, first she was studying nursing, so that was part of the problem. And we were young and naive back then and didn't understand all that we do now. But then she switched to, what was it? Not nutrition, but health and wellness. A health and wellness degree. And so she racked up a lot of that money earning her health and wellness degree. Now, without the help of her degree at all, she owns a yoga studio. She has personal clients that she coaches and gets paid for and coaches them in nutrition and health and wellness. She did this all without her degree and didn't use it once to work for anybody or to get a job or anything like that. And so she has everything she's wanted to have. She owns her own yoga studio. She's a certified instructor. She teaches people. And essentially this degree is just absolutely worthless. And we're paying off $60,000 worth of that and interest and everything as we speak. And it did absolutely nothing. And we can't get rid of that either. And so that's why there's such and I'm just so grateful that I didn't have to end up doing that myself. But man, hearing you talk about that just brings back the angst, I felt when I started to realize what was going on and how much we actually owed, and that it didn't help her achieve anything she actually wanted to do.
Nope. It's it's sad that parents don't spend more time thinking about what they're doing with their students when it comes to, post-secondary education. It's really sad. They decided to go to such and such school. My first reaction to that comment or that response is there someone there that is just killer at teaching the subject that your daughter or your son is interested in learning? That had better be the case. Right? There better be somebody there that is Nobel laureate strong, right? That is just absolute killer in that subject that would cause you to spend that kind of commitment of 4 years, 5 years, and how many, thousands and thousands of dollars to learn that. All right? Now, just for the record, not to be hypocritical, I have two boys, right? 19 and 21 suddenly. And my oldest son allegedly is studying in Australia at the moment. Every picture I get, he's on the beach, so I'm wondering about the academics. But having said that, we were very cautious about our decision as a family where he should go and what he would be studying and how he would be in that environment. And I think we made a wise choice. I'm very proud of that choice. And while it's not inexpensive, I think it was a good selection. My other son wants to be in aviation. He wants to repair airplanes. Well, that's pretty specialized, right? And so therefore, I think the choices we've made for him are also quite wise. But when I talk to some of my boys' friends or other high school students, I hear this, well, I'm going over here. What are you going to study? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And they're gonna run into that saw blade and realize they're going to be one of those 2/3 on the other end that drop out and say, that wasn't for me. I didn't stop and take time to understand what they're about to buy. Only the federal government would loan someone $20,000 who can't repay it for the next 25 years and nothing to collateralize the loan with to get a degree that few people care about when they're finished.
Yep.
And why would parents, what parents, what are you thinking? Would you go drop as a parent, even a modest state school these days, when it's all said and done, say you're in and out in 4, sounds like prison. You're in and out in 4, it's going to be $100K.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Would you go drop $100,000 on something you don't have some confidence in the outcome? Who would do that?
Totally.
Who in the world would do that? If you drop $100,000 on a house, you're going to have a house, right? You drop $100,000 on a college degree, what'd you get? You got a college degree. You bought time. You bought 4 years.
Oh, man. You got to stop talking about this, man. It's making me depressed.
Sorry.
It's such good stuff. And I really hope that some parents are listening to this. And if there's students listening to this, you should get your parents to listen to this. And again, what I think, both Ron and I are saying is that everything we're saying, it doesn't mean that you can't go to college or you can't make that decision. Depending on what you want to do, it could still be a good option for you. It could still have some value to you. I think the point here is, though, to be more conscious about your decision, to make a very conscious decision, to sit down, weigh all the pros and cons, do the math, talk to other people, and figure out what, based on what you want to actually do with your life, what should you be doing now and where should you go? And a lot of the issues, too, is a lot of time when you're young and you're 18 years old or so, oftentimes you don't know what you want to do with your life. And at that point, I would caution against, like Ron is saying, going to a university to figure that out, because you're just wasting time and money, oftentimes your parents' money, and that's not fair to them. Nothing's stopping you from taking a gap year, a year off, or even a few months off to just travel and go explore a bit. And you can always go back if you want.
Absolutely. Go sample some classes online. Go shadow. We have a program at Apprentice University called Discovery. And it's a very intentional shadowing, 3 to 6 months shadowing experience where a student comes in. We line them up. We line them up and tape them to a bunch of our mentors and say, here, go see what they do. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you the students that have come out of that and said, I wanted to be an interior designer. And now there's no way in the world I'm going to be an interior designer. Well, it's a good thing you found out now instead of dropping $100,000 and 4 years later go, I hate interior design.
Oh, man. It was literally the other day, Ron, or I'm sorry, probably the other month. I don't know why I'm exaggerating on time here, but the other month I was at Subway and I was talking to a gal who was making my sandwich, and she had gotten a 4-year degree in art, essentially, in the arts, in theater, I believe it was. And she was working at Subway, and she was talking about her parents and how they were frustrated at her because they dropped about $100,000 on her education, and here she was working at Subway. And that's pretty dang common. And here's something that I might mention because it might help people listening. My little brother is actually graduating high school this year as a senior. He has been interested in the last several years, and he knows what he wants to do with his life, and that's audio engineering. He's an audio engineer. He creates music. He creates like soundscapes, and he's creating all the music right now for a local baseball team, and he's actually making money doing that right now at 17 years old. And he created the music for this podcast, actually, called Salient Audio. He's working with, actually, John Lee Dumas. So he's doing pretty well with that, and he knows what he wants to do with his life. Now, what he really wants to get into, ultimately, is scoring music on large films. He really wants to do that. There's a couple colleges that he's looking at, or universities, that he's looking at going to that might be a good fit for that kind of future. But and of course, with me hosting this podcast, we talk a lot, and we're actively, and with our family, we're actively trying to figure out what is the best option for him. And so we're on forums, we're talking to other people who are doing what he wants to do, and they're saying, you might want to go to this university, you might want to go here because of the specific things in their program that you can get involved with, or you might want to go here for XYZ. And then we're looking at the outside, who can we connect to, because he has all the expertise, and he's been doing this by himself for years, and he's already a professional. He can make music. It's just a matter of getting some very specialized experience and networking with the right people. And so we're looking at I almost said alternative.
I got you. You're figuring it out.
Man.
There you go.
We're looking at different options outside of college for him to see, can he accomplish this without college? And we haven't decided yet. Maybe he can, maybe he can, but I think that's a good example of where we're being extremely intentional, because the last thing we want to do is have him waste 4 years and several $1,000s, and that's the last thing he wants to do. And he's already making money. He's just not quite doing ultimately what he wants to do. And is there a way to do that outside of traditional education?
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
There's a real interesting conversation to be had, and I've actually suggested this to several young people over the years, young adults over the years, and that is to craft a job plan. Right now, I heard recently when giving a talk at a local university, I overheard some students talking, and one of the young men said, I'm in a job sampling program.
Huh.
And I thought, well, that's kind of intriguing. Who came up with that idea? I never heard of that. So I went over to him and I said, introduced myself. I said, can you tell me about your job sample? He didn't have any idea who I was, right? I just said, my name's Ron. Tell me about your job sampling program. And he said, well, I've got my first job lined up, and starting in late May when I get out of school. By the way, remember, we use the same terms for jail for some reason. When I get out in May, I've got my first job lined up, and my goal is to, keep that till the end of the year, maybe January, February, and then I'm going to change jobs. And I'm going to keep that one for 9 months, and I'm going to change jobs. And so I'm going to do, 4 or 5 jobs over the next 3 years as a job sampling idea. And so, do these employers that are hiring you know that your goal is to only be there 9 months? Well, of course not. I said, well, look, young man, you're now on the list. Okay, no one's going to hire you if they see that you are literally job hopping intentionally just to gain experience. No one wants to hire you like this, right? Mm-hmm. As an employer, it's not fair to your employer for you to go in with the mindset, and I talk about this in my book I wrote last year, for you to go in with the mindset that you're only going to be there for a while. It's kind of like walking to first base, right? You got to sprint by first. You got to give it your all.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure he ultimately understood exactly where I was going with this, but I do think there is an opportunity for someone to say, this is my goal, at least for the, if I'm 21 years old or if I'm 19 years old out of high school, to say, hey, when I'm 27, so 8 years from now, I want to be doing that, whatever that is, and looking and inventorying the skills they have today and saying, if I take that job for a year or two, and I take that job, which is a step up for a year or two, and I take that job, which is another step up for a year or two, then when I'm 27 in 8 years, I should be ready and prepared and eligible to get there. A self-directed, imagine that, a self-directed growth plan. Why not, right? Why not?
Right.
Now, as an employer, if you came to me and said, hey, you know what, here's my goal, I might look at you and say, hey, I'd love to help you get there. I'd love to help you get there. Maybe it's not with us. Maybe you're here for 2, 3, 4 years and you move on. If that's your calling, if that's what God would have you do, then I'm going to be in front of you and push. Or in front of you and block. I'm going to get behind you and push. I'm going to get beside you and coach, but I'll help you get there, right? Don't surprise me with it. Don't walk in and go, hey, 9 months are up, I'm leaving. I'm on my job sampling program.
Right.
Don't do that. But I do think there's a case to be made for that self-directed stair step of jobs that get you to what your goal may be. And if when you get there, you say, I want to do more, I want to stretch my goal. Stretch the goal. You're in control. We relegated our sensibility about the internal destiny that we have, right? Where do we want to be? We've relegated that to the constructs of eggheads that sit behind a desk in Washington, D.C. and say, this is how we want people to think. This is as much as you are able to achieve, right? Stop it. That's not true.
Totally. Well, shoot, man, this has been incredibly informative. You ever thought of being a history teacher?
No, not right now. My wife is a history teacher.
Oh, really?
She's actually an RN, but she runs a fairly substantial, you would call it a private school, but it's a tutelage program for homeschool families, and it's quite large. There's 50 students or so, and it's a pretty good sized program. And she has about 70 teachers and aides that are on her staff, and it's part time. Supposedly part time, but she's the history teacher. I'm the tag along. But I think history teaches us a lot, and especially in education. We're constantly see people try to reinvent something fresh and new, and that's great. Go for it, but don't expect everybody to conform to your standards, right? To your self-prescribed standards. So there's a lot of that goes on, and I'll be as fervent as they can be when people start wanting to try to sort of regulate how we roll as an educational organization. We don't need the government red tape around what we do. We're all legal. We've been all checked out and, going through our physicals. So we're all positive and confident about that. But resist, the standardization that's out there, because it doesn't work. Accreditation is the answer to is the quality control answer for education, right? Accreditation is the quality control answer for education. If it worked, we wouldn't have these problems.
Right. Absolutely.
If accreditation worked, I wouldn't have to start Apprentice University to find talent.
Amazing.
So therefore, accreditation is not the answer.
Nope.
Is it a useful tool? Yeah, maybe. It has some useful facets. But unto itself, it's not the holy grail of education.
Amazing, Ron. Well, we're getting close on time here. What's?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. Maybe we'll have you on in the future. I just love the history lessons. Honestly, I learned a lot in this episode, and I hope people listening learned a lot too. And so I really appreciate you for that. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to talk about this more at all, or to connect with Apprentice University as well?
You can send me an email, ron@apprentice.university. Real simple.
Okay.
If you want to check out our website, it's apprentice.university or apprenticeu.com, either way. But if you send an email to ron@apprentice.university, I'll get back to you.
Okay. And your book is called You're Always Being Interviewed, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well for people who are interested in that.
Yeah, and you can get that on Amazon.
Oh, awesome. And Ron, I just want to thank you once more for being on the show. Successful Dropouts, you've been hanging out with Ron and Kylan, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Ron into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish.